Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Pope Francis has made his way to Alberta as he meets with First Nations offering an apology into the Catholic Church's involvement in residential schools. An energy analyst weighs in if Premier Jason Kenney asking the Competition Bureau to investigate gas price fixing will have much of an impact. And Ukrainian refugees arriving in Lethbridge may not have access to free bus passes. A spokesperson with Project Sunflower explains why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Pope Francis was in Alberta today and apologized for the role the Roman Catholic Church played in residential schools. Francis gave an address while visiting the site of the former Ermineskin Indian Residential School at Masquachese, Alberta. 5 teepees were set up at the site, with one of them representing the entrance to the former school. Thousands of survivors, elders, and their family members are attending the event. Treaty 6 Grand Chief George Arcan Jr. says the visit by the Pope marks an important historical moment for survivors of the residential school crisis.
It was an opportunity and a very humbling experience for me to, on behalf of the people of Treaty 6, to welcome the Pope to our territory. But more importantly, to welcome the Pope to come and talk and apologize to our survivors so that we could begin our journey of healing and that we can begin the opportunity to change the way things have been for our people for many, many years. I asked the Pope to walk with us in this new journey, and we prayed and asked him for safe travels here in our territory as we welcome him and everyone else from across the world.
A landmark in Calgary was badly damaged by vandalism over the weekend. City officials say 40 glass side panels on the Peace Bridge over the Bow River were shattered. The tubular bridge was designed and manufactured in Spain before being shipped to Calgary back in 2012. Witnesses and video footage show a man in his 40s smashing the panels using a hammer, rebar, and bricks. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is asking the Competition Bureau of Canada to investigate price gouging at the pumps. The Alberta government eliminated the 13-cent per litre provincial fuel tax back in April, but Albertans have not seen a lot of savings. Dan McTagg is the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, and he says he's happy the Premier is deciding to do something about the price fixing, but he says gas retailers have been playing the alleged collusion game for quite some time.
Reality is that gas stations have traditionally taken anywhere from 8 to 10 cents to 12 cents a litre. Now, of course, they're looking at margins on a day like today where they're charging $1.79.9, but it's costing them $1.37 to buy their fuel. That's extraordinary. That's a 42-cent retail margin, and strip away the GST, it becomes 39 cents. Strip away that traditional 10, 11, 12 cents, and now you're looking at 27 cents a litre net that they're adding to the price of gasoline, or they're not passing on.
Premier Kenney has also reached out to Service Alberta to see if there's anything that can be done under the Alberta Consumer Protection Act to help motorists save even more money. Well, we enjoyed slightly cooler temperatures and some light rain in parts of southwestern Alberta on Monday. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, how long will the moisture continue?
Well, basically just into Monday night, Hal. We are looking at about a 30% chance of showers this evening with a risk of thunderstorms. Fog patches developing overnight, as well as some winds from the north at 20, gusting to 40 kilometers per hour. Overnight low 12 degrees. Into Tuesday morning, that fog is going to dissipate. High of 26, going to feel more like 28 with the humidex, mix of sun and cloud. As for the rest of the week, it's going to get even hotter. I'll have all those details coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. An ambulatory clinic in Coaldale has reopened to the public. The clinic at the Coaldale Health Centre treats minor cuts and burns, along with sprains, simple fractures, and infections. Coaldale Mayor Jack Van Ryan says the facility will help residents of the town who are in need of quick treatment.
Ambulatory care in Coaldale is very much needed as a first step. Ultimately, we're looking at getting our urgent care open again, and then again after that, get our full-blown emergency department back. Town of Coaldale, we're nearing 9,000 people, and the fact that our residents have to go to outlying municipalities for their basic emergent needs to our council is ridiculous. So we're happy that this is up and running now.
The clinic is open weekdays from 5:30 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. and on weekends from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. You know, this is the time of year when many of us go camping. Some of us even venture into the backcountry, especially out west here when we head to the mountains. Sometimes you can get lost. And if you do get lost, there's a formula you can follow so you don't panic. That's according to Derek Martin, president of the Lethbridge Search and Rescue Association.
If you think you're lost, it can be a very traumatic experience. Remain calm, try to control your fear, and remember the acronym STOP. It means sit, think, observe, and plan. Once you have a plan, you'll feel much better.
Martin says if you're heading out this summer on a camping trip, to make sure that you were well prepared. He suggests taking along some essentials, including a first aid kit, water, a blanket, knife, and sun protection for your eyes. There appears to be a high demand for new hires in the wind turbine field, especially for those who recently graduated from Lethbridge College. Officials say this is because there's a lot of development in alternative energy sources and energy structure, so the demand for more workers is high right now. An official with Lethbridge College says almost all of their graduates from this year have found work already.
The year before that, it was above 90%, and we're anticipating for the next year or two, it'll be above 90%. There's a lot of speculation that over the next few years, it's going to be one of the fastest growing industries and therefore the fastest growing business to be involved in. All the sources that talk about where the employment is going to be in the future and everything always speak highly of the alternate energy and specifically the wind in our area. So they're anticipating it's going to be one of the highest growth areas that there are.
For those who are interested in joining the college's program, Wyber says there are only a few spots left for this fall school year. August 1st is Heritage Day. Now, the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association is hosting a big event for all to take part in. With the pandemic the past few years, a Heritage Day event has not been held, but will move forward this year with lots of vendors and fun for the entire family. An official with the association says this event will be an opportunity for many to learn about different heritage types.
It allows people to celebrate all together our differences and similarities. We had overwhelming number of applications for performers this year, so that's really exciting. People are really, really excited to get back at it.
The Monday event will kick off from 11 till 4 o'clock. Legislation for an existing amendment by the City of Lethbridge to offer more aid to refugees in our city will be debated during Tuesday's City Council meeting. On July 5th, Council voted to allow free public transit for all refugees in our city. A local organization called Project Sunflower was in support of the idea, but the group's spokesperson, Devin Hargraves, says it didn't take into account refugees coming to Lethbridge who have not been granted official refugee status and who are currently on work visas.
The initial intent of this legislation was to include Ukrainians. So I reached out and Councillor Schmidt-Rempel quickly made an amendment which will be presented at Lethbridge City Council tomorrow. I have no doubt that it will pass. I'm very thankful, as is the rest of Project Sunflower, that we have a city council that's so approachable and that steps up to make sure that all new arrivals to Lethbridge can be assisted in the best way we can.
Hargrave says to date, Project Sunflower has helped place more than 70 Ukrainians into Lethbridge in southern Alberta. The federal Conservatives say Ottawa is failing Afghan refugees and is calling on the government to extend an immigration program it set up to bring Afghans trying to flee the Taliban to Canada. Opposition MPs say the government has failed in its moral obligation to help people who assisted Canada with its military mission in Afghanistan and now face reprisals from the Taliban, which seized control last year.
You know, rightfully so. People did step up for Ukrainians. That's our obligation and duty. At the same time, the responses that we're getting from in my office and from across Canada now are they're seeing a bias between the two. And Canada used to be a beacon of hope. Canada was a leader, and it should continue to do that. It should be a leader when it comes to helping those that are being persecuted around the world. And we hear stories all the time that there's, resources that should be used across the board evenly. And right now, it's because of the mismanagement under this Liberal government in immigration. We've never seen this many backlogs in the history of Canada. And it's causing many, many hardships to all sorts of people that are trying to come to Canada. And the government needs to step up and not forget the people of Afghanistan.
The persecution of Christians continues in a number of countries around the world. According to Voice of the Martyrs, not only are a number of Christians being murdered, but churches are also being closed down. Greg Musselman is with Voice of the Martyrs Canada, and he joins us now from St. Albert, just outside of Edmonton. Greg, you say things are especially bad in Asia?
And in China, they're just making it more and more difficult for our brothers and sisters in Christ, trying to shut down anything Christian on the internet. And of course, we've had the situation in Hong Kong. We're watching that, very closely. There's been certainly more freedom there than there is in mainland China. But, we continue to hear of believers being arrested, house churches being shut down, these prison sentences that are just outrageous. There's the Latter Rain Church there that continues to meet, and they trying to meet anyway. And every time they get together, it seems that government officials arresting the pastors and the believers. So it continues to be difficult. And yet China, the church is growing by leaps and bounds, and it is absolutely amazing the growth in terms of numbers. What's happening in China in the midst of persecution.
Now, what about Pakistan? How much of a threat are Muslim extremist groups to fellow believers there?
Well, Pakistan continues to be a country of concern because of more of a radical Islam. When you see, groups like the Taliban, and we, of course, hear more about Afghanistan, but they're still active. There's probably about 1,000 or so Christian girls, teenage girls, every single year that are being, taken and forced into Islam, forced into marriages of much older men. Then when the family protests, they're often ignored by the police. Now, we have seen some recent developments where these young girls have been taken, and even within a few days, they've already been violated and assaulted, but at least they're getting back to their families and then having to deal with that.
Thanks so much, Greg. That was Greg Musselman from Voice of the Martyrs Canada, joining us from St. Albert, Alberta. There are a number of people who are angry that the Biden administration is funding a group that is allegedly promoting hatred against the Jews in Israel. The Gatestone Institute says the United States is giving more money to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. According to our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, this is a group that in the past allegedly had school books that incited violence against the Jews.
UNRWA, as you said, is the UN agency that is designated just to help Palestinians. And of course, we've been giving funding to them. But again, they've been shielding, using children as shields, putting weapons in their schools. Their textbooks talk about, killing 2 Jews today and 2 tomorrow. How many have I killed in total? You have videos of young children with these slogans at school talking about killing Jews, but they're so young, they shouldn't even be talking about that kind of violence at such a young age.
Lisa will also discuss how the Israeli Navy recently took out a ship that was allegedly smuggling equipment to support Hamas terrorists in Gaza. She'll have all the details coming up in the second half of our program. The Saskatchewan government is looking into expanding surgeries provided by private health care. Officials say a request for proposals has been issued for an orthopedic surgery facility to increase operating room and bed capacity for certain surgeries. The government says it is also looking into temporary out-of-province surgeries for knee and hip replacements. It says the private surgical facility outside of the province will be contracted by the Saskatchewan Health Authority to provide publicly funded orthopedic surgeries. Saskatchewan has also begun COVID-19 vaccinations for kids 6 months to the age of 5. Randall Robbins took her 3-year-old daughter to get her first shot. She says her family can now lead a more normal life.
We stayed home a lot. We didn't really go out much because she wasn't vaccinated or protected, so we were trying to do our best to keep her safe. So we kind of stayed at home and stuck in our own little bubble. It felt really good. We've been waiting for it for a long time, so it's nice to give her some protection finally. I think we'll just feel more comfortable trying to live a more normal life again now that she's going to be vaccinated. We can just relax a little bit.
The RCMP is looking for youth between the ages of 13 and 21 from Manitoba to be part of its National Youth Advisory Committee. Mounties say the group shares thoughts about youth crime and victimization topics while helping to shape Mountie programs and initiatives. Last year, 9 Manitobans were part of the advisory group. The deadline to apply for the first selection round is July the 31st. Well, we enjoyed a slightly cooler day here in Lethbridge, Alberta, with some showers in some regions. How long will the cooler temperatures remain? Full weather details are coming up. We had a lot of cloud cover, some light showers, and cooler temperatures in many parts of southwestern Alberta on Monday. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a complete look at the forecast. Jeanette, how long will the clouds and showers be sticking around?
Well, it should only last into this evening, Hal, with the 30% chance of showers overnight and a risk of a thunderstorm. Into Tuesday, though, mix of sun and cloud, high of 26 degrees, going to feel more like 28 with that humidex. After that, mainly sunny skies. We're looking at Wednesday, high of 26 under sunny skies, sunshine on Thursday, climbing all the way up to 30. Look what happens on Friday. That mercury is going to rise even further to 35 degrees. I think that's one of our hottest this year so far. Not quite a record breaker, but we're going to be up there for sure. Saturday, high of 31 and then 32 degrees on Sunday. So it looks like the start to a very, very warm long weekend. So hopefully your plans include something nice and cool, hopefully near a lake or something. 26 is our average high for this time of year, average low 11. 36 was our hot day on this day back in 1939, and we had the coolest back in 2001, which was only 3 degrees. Sun rose this morning at 5:52, and our sun set this evening at 9:23 p.m. So we are well underneath that 16-hour mark of daylight hours. On the west coast, actually, a heat wave is hitting British Columbia this week. So these cities are under a heat warning. 30 degrees in Victoria, sunny skies, 27 the high in Vancouver. It's going to feel more like 35 though inland. 25 the high tomorrow in Edmonton under sunny skies. 24 for Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, as we move over into the rest of the prairies, we're seeing highs of 23 in both Saskatoon and Regina. Nice sunny skies there. 23 the high in Winnipeg, looking at a chance of showers with a risk of thunderstorms. All three of those cities, by the way, looking at 30 to 50 kilometer per hour winds. So it's going to be a little bit gusty tomorrow. 33 the high in Toronto, also looking at a chance of thunderstorms there. Same thing for Ottawa. Chance of thunderstorms, 30 the high, 31 in Montreal, and of course all that humidity building up into those thunder showers, thunderstorms there. On the East Coast, also dealing with a heat warning in effect there, and severe thunderstorm watches for overnight in Fredericton, Halifax, and Charlottetown. So 28 the high tomorrow in Fredericton. Same thing for Halifax with a mix of sun and cloud there. 26 the high in Charlottetown tomorrow. 25 in St. John's, Newfoundland with partly cloudy skies. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
UCP leadership hopeful Brian Jean has blasted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the Liberals' plan of nitrogen and fertilizer emission caps. In a Facebook post, Jean wrote that the Trudeau government has lost its mind since fertilizer feeds the world. He says Alberta farmers are heroes, but to the Trudeau Liberals and the government, they're the enemy. Jean says Trudeau has no jurisdiction over provincially regulated agriculture, and limiting fertilizer will not only bankrupt lots of farmers, but would also lead to famines around the world. The price of mustard may be going up. Industry experts say a mustard seed shortage along with severe drought is driving up the price of the popular condiment. France, the world's largest consumer of mustard, is already facing shortages, while other countries are seeing prices climb as last year's mustard seed stocks are depleted. Analysts say the mustard seed yield was only 35% of the 10-year average in Saskatchewan last year. But farmers planted around 550,000 acres of mustard seed this year, which is an increase of almost 40% compared with the 10-year average. Producers say there should be a lot of Dijon just in time for Christmas if conditions hold over the next 4 to 6 weeks. The union representing around 2,000 workers affected by WestJet's potential purchase of Sunwing Airlines says the takeover should be subject to job creation guarantees. WestJet said the deal announced in March will protect and create jobs in part by shifting Sunwing's seasonal aircraft into year-round use. Unifor says it is concerned, however, that WestJet's reference to crew optimization and improved efficiencies could point to cutting jobs or contracting them out for lower wages. It says in a submission to Transport Canada's Public Interest Review that it is in the public's best interest to secure quality job opportunities. The union representing hundreds of WestJet baggage and customer service workers in Calgary and Vancouver says a tentative contract agreement with the airline includes wage increases. The deal between Unifor and WestJet was announced late Sunday night, just ahead of a potential strike on Wednesday. The deal, touted as the first between the two sides, will be presented to union members later this week. No details are being provided pending the ratification vote. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 121 points in the day to finish at 19,104. The Dow was up 90 points to 31,990. The S&P 500 was up 5 points on the day to 3966. And the Nasdaq was down 51 points to 11,782. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.83 to 96.53 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 52 cents to 8.82 US. Gold was even on the day at 17.1979 US an ounce, and silver was also even at 18.44 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.16 per bushel, barley's at $8.49. Canola's at $18.08, and corn is at $10.41 per bushel. Live cattle were up 38 cents to $137.75. Feeder cattle were down $2.25 to $179.30, and lean hogs were down $1.48 to $117.23. All August contracts. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.84 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Pope Francis delivered his long-awaited apology for the Catholic Church's role in Canada's residential school system. Speaking to thousands of people in Masquachese, Alberta, the Pope says he wanted to express his sorrow and ask for forgiveness. Francis says the memories of the children who never returned from residential schools left him with a sense of sorrow and shame. There was applause after he delivered his apology. The Israeli Navy sank a Palestinian fishing boat that was allegedly smuggling equipment to support the terrorist group Hamas in Gaza. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details for us in just a moment. There is talk that U.S. President Joe Biden may be sending more U.S. taxpayers' funds to a group that allegedly promotes hate against Israel. To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the Gatestone Institute says Biden is giving more funding to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. It's a group that in the past allegedly had school books that incites violence against Israel.
Yeah, nothing new, nothing new. The Palestinians have a certain way of milking the system for more funding, but not changing their ways. And that's the issue here. Look, this is not the first president that has given funding to the Palestinians through UNRWA. UNRWA, as you said, is the UN agency that is designated just to help Palestinians. And of course, we've been giving funding to them, but again, they've been shielding, using children as shields, putting weapons in their schools. Their textbooks talk about, killing 2 Jews today and 2 tomorrow. How many have I killed in total? You have videos of young children, with these slogans at school talking about killing Jews, but they're so young, they shouldn't even be talking about that kind of violence at such a young age. And the question here is not about the funding. It's about why we're not ever using our aid here in the United States for any leverage to make any changes. If you want to give the money to the Palestinians, if you think that they are a deserving people of the funding, they're in need, well, then use that leverage and say, well, I want to see those textbooks changed. I want to see the rhetoric changed. If we hear you saying or inciting this kind of hate, teaching the children this kind of garbage, well, then we're going to cut your aid. And that's the only way we're going to have a generational difference going forward. And if not, you're going to have these children to grow up to be shaheeds, martyrs, suicide bombers, growing up with this hatred of a people that live only miles from their borders. And that, that's the reason we talk about this. President Trump was the only president who said, enough is enough, and he cut the funding. Now, President Biden came into office, and it was within the first week when he did a 180 on so many of President Trump's policies, including giving funding to the Palestinians, again, without any leverage, without any slap on the wrist that says, if you want this, you have to do this. It's like giving allowance to a child. You got to take out the garbage, you get your allowance. And it's just not done in this kind of administration. So they just want to give out the money. They don't talk about getting anything in return. America's bad. We're the guilty ones. We're the bad ones. And here's your money. You can continue inciting hate and going on status quo.
So has Israel actually called out the Biden administration on this move?
Well, Israel tiptoes around the Biden administration. Israel, obviously, under Bibi Netanyahu, had a wonderful, beautiful, probably the best relationship they ever had with the U.S. president under President Trump, right? So they moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Many U.S. presidents had promised to do so, but chickened out at the last minute. We had, the Abraham Accords, of course, bringing so much, trade and prosperity to the Arab states as well as to Israel, making it obviously much more safe, secure, and prosperous for Israel and its neighbors. But, the Biden administration, it's been kind of like a cold friendship, but a friendship nonetheless. So they haven't gone back to the Obama frigid relationship that President Obama and Bibi Netanyahu had at the time. They said that was more of a personal thing, not so much about Israel and the U.S., but it obviously affected the relationship between the U.S. and Israel at that time. And now Israel kind of, has to work around this. Obviously, they don't want to disrupt their own relationship with the United States, but they have to be weary. They watch this terrorism be funded by their friends, the United States. So it's crazy to watch this circle of violence in the Middle East and to see that the United States is complicit in that circle of violence.
Now, Lisa, speaking of terrorism, the Israeli Navy sank a Palestinian fishing vessel that was allegedly smuggling equipment to support Hamas terrorists in Gaza on Sunday. Now, apparently, crew aboard the boat ignored multiple calls and commands to stop from the Israeli Navy.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. They got warnings to say stop. It's almost like a police stop. Let me check your trunk. And if you start running from the police, that's when a chase ensues, and they know that you're guilty of carrying whatever it is, drugs in your car, whatever it is. They knew that this fishing boat, so to speak, was carrying tons of weapons to get to Hamas, and they have to do, they'd rather stop it there than to have to kind of catch it in the Iron Dome, stop the missiles, stop the weaponry, stop the guns there, and not let it get to Hamas hands. But it's horrific. The mainstream media misses these stories. It doesn't behoove them to cover these stories. Once these weapons land in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem and other places, and then Israel is forced to retaliate to defend itself, then you hear the mainstream media begin to cover this story. But these are the initial parts of the story that everyone seems to ignore.
Passengers on board a Saturday flight from Israel to Poland were ordered to carry out an emergency evacuation due to fears of a bomb on board the aircraft, Lisa.
Yes, this airline, actually, this is the second bomb scare that they have had in recent weeks. This was going from Ben Gurion Airport in Israel to Poland. It did land at about 10:30 p.m. Then when they did land, they were ordered to go to a different part of the tarmac. And the passengers were then coming off of chutes, of slides, to get out of the plane. But thankfully, nobody was hurt. But again, it kind of begs the question, why are these threats happening? Who's making the threats? And in fact, if one can potentially get through. If they were that scared when they were landing, how credible is the threat? And again, what's next, right? I mean, how do we keep these airlines safe? Obviously, a lot of bad actors out there and a lot of flights, and already we're having issues with canceled flights and keeping everyone secure and safe. And of course, it's not COVID now. Now we're back to terrorism. So never a dull moment.
Let's make our way over to Iran for just a moment here, Lisa. There's word that a senior Iranian missile engineer may have been killed in the southern part of Iran over the weekend. There are some reports saying that he was actually assassinated. Tell me more.
Right. So this is a trend nowadays. If we've been following the assassination, and we call them assassination because they are officials, but really the murder of high up officials in Iran's nuclear program. So in the past, when these assassinations would occur, Israel was not formally taking responsibility. For the first time, about a month ago, we had a breaking report that Israel was now saying, yep, that was us. And this was when one of the other senior officials of the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, which is a paramilitary arm of the Iranian regime, was taken out in front of his house by a round of bullets as he was trying to get into his car. Again, the Iran regime blamed Israel Israel would usually deny, but in this case, they actually said, yes, it was us. This is because, and why are we seeing the shift? That's because we are having an open proxy war between Israel and the Iranian regime. When Iran threatens to take Israel off the map and continues building its weapons program, enriching uranium at over 60%, shutting off the IAEA, the atomic energy cameras, and not allowing any surveillance of its programs, and threatening, frankly, to have a bomb, well, then Israel has to, again, curtail this, in its infancy as much as it can. So Israel has been targeting their weapons depots, has been targeting their experts, in this case, as you see, and targeting them in Syria, in a place where they exist outside of their own borders. And of course, the Iranian regime would prefer to keep it outside their borders. But again, another piece of this proxy war that we're seeing between the two.
Lisa, you and I have chatted in the past about these massive caravans, so many thousands of people leaving Southern and Central America, making their way to Mexico and the United States. There's word now that the Biden administration is considering issuing government ID cards to border crossers and illegal aliens who are set for release into various communities in the United States. It's all part of the government's catch and release operation.
Yeah, I mean, really no words. This is part of the Department of Homeland Security. Again, Homeland Security, catch and release. I mean, how secure does that sound if you're the Department of Homeland Security? So what happens is that they have a process of basically don't ask, don't tell. You capture some of these immigrants that come through the border, and then they are released. Now, not only will they be released, they will also be given ID cards. This is a proposal by the Biden administration to give them ID cards. We know what's coming next. They will be able to vote. And we know how they will vote because of whomever gave them the ID cards and whomever gave them the ability and whomever said we will have these lax policies at the border. So it is all probably in a process of getting, everyone kind of absorbed into society. Now, a funny little caveat to this story is that the governor of Texas has been busing many of these migrants to Washington, D.C. And the reason he's doing so is saying, look, if you're the Biden administration and you're saying it's wonderful to have so many illegal immigrants pour into your cities, well then literally we will give you that wish. And taking them from Texas, where they obviously cannot be absorbed in these numbers, to Washington. And of course, there is been outcry and everyone's upset about it. So, it's easy to deliver the lip service. It's easy to pretend that this is a humanitarian service when it's not. When so many people die making this trip, when their children sent alone because it behooves them, they incentivize children coming on their own because they cannot be sent back if it's not an adjacent country, meaning if they're not from Canada or Mexico, children cannot be sent back. And we saw the 53 that died in that tractor trailer just a few weeks ago. So if you are making the humanitarian argument for this, you're absolutely wrong. This is not something that's humanitarian. What is humanitarian is having a proper immigration process where people can come in, they can be vetted so that both on this side of the border and on that side of the border, everyone is safer. In Mexico, they're upset. They just pledged $1.5 billion to the Biden administration to help us with our immigration crisis because they don't want to deal with the fallout. Northern Mexico is filled with these camps of illegals because they are either waiting or they're being sent back. And for that reason, Mexico is fed up. So no one's winning here. That's the bottom line.
Lisa, there's talk here in Canada about potential COVID-19 mandates being brought back this fall. Now, in the United States, a number of Democratic states are bringing back school masks, and parent advocacy groups are fighting back.
Yes. So I actually was able to interview Sharon McKeeman from Let Them Breathe. She is probably one of the foremost, if not the foremost, face of American parents fighting these mandates. She started the group Let Them Breathe in 2020 to fight the school closures and the mandatory masking here in the United States, based in Southern California. So she has fought so many different school districts and brought actual lawsuits against the governor of California and against these school districts, and she has been victorious in many of them. So as of last week, San Diego School District announced that they will go back to mandatory masking. And when they were pressed on the issue of children who have medical issues or cannot be masked, she said they can either go to a different school or Zoom from home, which, as we know, the data is not supporting this. A, the data is not supporting it for COVID in children, and B, the data for children Zooming or masking has not shown anything. So where are they getting their information from? I mean, this is completely arbitrary, but what we do know, the data that we do know, is that children are behind. They're 40 to 60% behind in math. The numbers is probably even lower in minority communities. They're 20% below where they should be in terms of physical activity. I mean, this is detrimental, particularly for the young kids who are learning how to speak and communicate, and their teachers' mouths are covered with masks. And again, here in Los Angeles, we have Barbara Ferrer, who is the county health supervisor. She is not a doctor. She has a PhD in social justice. It now comes out this week that her daughter, who is also not a doctor, is the one that she contracted to come up with a report that will now be used as the CDC guideline to mask people in Los Angeles. And we'll be either masking at the end of this week or it will be overturned. I'm not sure. A lot of people are fighting this, but they want to go back to indoor masking in Los Angeles, again, based on a bogus report from a non-doctor. Again, I'll add this. I know I'm going on very long on this one, but there was a leaked tape, and I really encourage all individuals who want to fight this to use this as evidence or as a good resource. There is a leaked tape from the physicians at LA County USC Hospital where they are discussing masking and going back to mandates. And they talk about how the patients who are being admitted to the hospital right now, only 10% of them are really COVID cases. The other ones are actually other issues that are on the periphery. And of those, almost none of them are getting intubated and almost none of them are dying. So when they use the evidence of LA hospitals are overflowing with COVID patients and the numbers are up, they actually called it a bad cold in this tape. So it's very interesting to watch the facts versus the made up facts and where they're pushing us towards this fall.
Lisa, we only have a couple of short moments left here, but I wanted to chat with you about a Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee has warned Americans not to use DNA testing services. Jason Crow says the information collected could create bioweapons targeting individuals or groups.
Yeah, so what they're suggesting is that you do not use these companies like 23andMe where they do genetic testing. You basically give a sample and you mail it to them, and they give you all the things, all your chromosomal layout, what you could be allergic to and what you have, you're predisposed to, et cetera. What he's warning against is that these companies can sell your DNA and then use it against us as a society on how to target us. I mean, perhaps that's what's been done already, but this is what he is warning in terms of the future of warfare, is this biochemical warfare, where it would be, specific parts of our DNA would be sold and therefore used against us. And he's saying, don't use these services. So I have heard this before, but this is more, in conjunction with biowarfare and not anything else. But I have heard that there may be very, very significant security breaches with these companies. So it's better not to use them.
U.S. political reporter and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Residential fires can be so devastating to families. Even if there are no injuries or fatalities, you could lose everything. But too often, they are deadly, and many of those fires are preventable. Joining us now to discuss fire prevention and safety is Troy Hicks. He's the Fire Prevention Officer with the City of Lethbridge Fire Department. Troy, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Now, Troy, there have been a number of fires here in Lethbridge over the past year. What has been the number one cause of these blazes? Is maybe people not properly disposing of their cigarettes?
Yeah, you know what, Hal? Every year we usually run into the same types of fires. This year, though, 2022, and even last year, 2021, we have definitely seen an increase in improper disposal of smoking materials. I don't know, maybe because of COVID, so many more people were home and different things like this, working from home. But yeah, we have definitely seen an increase in smoking material fires.
So where are people actually disposing of their smokes? They're putting them in plant pots? Like, what are they doing with them?
Absolutely. We have everything from planters, or we've had issues with plastic buckets that the person thought there was water in. We've even had issues with people using a proper ashtray, but it's an ashtray that's meant for indoors, not outdoors, and they'll have it on their back patio. We all know the winds here in southern Alberta. and they go outside, they have their cigarette, they put it out, but it's not really out. And once they go back inside, the wind picks up, blows those embers around, and whether it's a lawn chair or anything like that, it catches it on fire.
Are there still incidents as well of people maybe smoking in bed, falling asleep with a cigarette in their hands?
In my time here, I haven't seen that type of fire in years. It's always been just improperly disposed of when they're putting them out.
Now, Troy, we also often see a lot of grass fires here in southwestern Alberta, especially when it's so dry. Are many of those fires caused by people maybe tossing their cigarette out the window?
Absolutely. We see it every day. I see it when I drive home, up down the coulees and stuff like that. I see it on the highway. I can't 100% say that every fire on the side of the highway is caused by that. We could have anything from sparks from maybe trucks with their brakes are locked on, or train tracks or something as well. But definitely a large percentage of them are from people throwing cigarettes out their window.
So how can you educate people more as to some of the causes of the fires and what we can do to prevent those fires, such as not throwing your cigarette out the window?
Absolutely. No, we will put out media releases. I actually put out a media release here in the city yesterday about planters, and just it's not meant to be. When it comes to highways, we have other provinces here in Canada that there's actually fines. People can contact the police, take the license plate number down, and people are issued very hefty fines for throwing cigarettes and stuff outside their windows. It is something that's been discussed here in Southern Alberta and in Lethbridge in particular. It's not in effect yet. I don't think it's a bad idea. We just need people to realize, unfortunately, we're a society of people that think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. And, I used to be one of those people too, until I started in this profession. And now, it does happen, and it happens a lot, and we can educate as much as we can. But the whole goal is eventually to try to maybe not completely get rid of these types of fires, but at the very least, lower the numbers and just continue to educate more people.
Speaking of education, Troy, how important is it really for parents to speak to young people and their kids about the dangers of using matches and lighters?
Oh, absolutely. We actually have had a couple fires already this year, just caused by curious children that, maybe a lighter was sitting on a table and mom and dad weren't watching, or the babysitter wasn't watching. And they're just like, oh, I seen dad play with this. Yesterday, I had a 12-year-old boy here in my office, and it's not that he's done something wrong. His mom was just concerned about, she didn't feel he respected being around a fire pit enough and the dangers of a fire pit. So I sat here and I talked to him for about a half hour, and he was a great young man. And I educated him. I showed him the fire trucks, and I think he left here maybe realized a bit more like, hey, you know what? This is important. I do need to be respectful for this kind of stuff.
Are there any statistics available as to how many families actually have a fire evacuation plan in place? And what are some of the key steps with an evacuation plan?
As for numbers here in the city, it's been a long time since we've been in the schools because of COVID, but I'm starting to get appointments booked, so we are getting back in to educate. I find that the numbers are quite high when I go to schools, particularly say from kindergarten till about grade 3 or 4. I'm happy with the numbers of people that tell me that, yes, they do have fire safety plans. When we do things like any public education event, like we're at the Home and Garden Expo this year, I did have some parents come up to say how nice it was to see us, and actually asked me if I could go over their plan with them. For anybody else that doesn't have one, or maybe someone that wants to do one, there's a few things you really need to hit. Make sure everyone in your house knows what to do when the smoke detector goes off. They have an escape plan. They need to, if their bedrooms are up on the second floor, they can either go down the stairs or whatever they have to do to get out. And they need to have a meeting place. Your meeting place should not be hopefully crossing a road just because of traffic. You want to be careful with that. And if you also have a fenced-in backyard, you don't really want your meeting place to be in the backyard, because now you're trapped back there if the fire gets out of control. But there is lots of things. People can contact me at the fire department, and I can definitely give them as much information as they like for their home safety plan.
In the past, when I've spoken to firefighters, they say when you go to bed at night with your bedroom door, always keep it closed. Can you explain why that's so important?
For sure. Even the normal bedroom doors, they're not necessarily what you would call a fire door, which what we see in apartment buildings and hotels and stuff. But even a normal bedroom door, fire needs oxygen in order to burn. In order to keep a fire burning, there has to be enough oxygen. Oxygen is even more important than the fuel. So by closing that door, you are mitigating the amount of oxygen that fire could have. So whether the fire starts in the room, it'll keep it in that room. But if you're in your room sleeping and the fire's out in the hallway or out in something like that, by you having that door closed, you're going to keep all flame, heat, and smoke from getting into your room for a significant amount of time. Therefore, if you can't make it outside, maybe the fire is directly outside your door. Well, you have time to stay in your room. Hopefully, if you have a phone, you can call 911 and let us know what room you're in. Or if you don't, you open up your window and you make sure your neighbors know where you are. And when we arrive to put that fire out, we are coming straight to your window to get you out of there.
And if you have an ensuite bath, I guess you can roll up a towel, a wet towel, throw it under the door to prevent a lot of the smoke from coming in, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, every little bit helps because, as we always say, every second matters, right? So
now, Troy, when there's a fire and you have kids and your pets and you're ready to evacuate, what else should you really grab in a fire? Maybe some photo albums, special memories, or how about hockey card collections?
You know what, Hal? I was looking at your questions this morning, and I could definitely see where you're coming from. Rule of thumb, especially as far as the fire department's concerned, you get your family, you get out. We even educate people that one thing I will say, when a smoke detector goes off, as much as we don't like that sound, pets hate it even more. And chances are your pets are going to hide. If they're not right beside you to take them out as you're leaving, you need to leave. We don't recommend you go back in and get your pets. If you have a fire in your home and the fire department shows up and you and all your family members are outside, not calling the pets, not being a family member, but you and your kids are outside, if you let us know that there's a pet inside, we're going inside that building just the same way we would if it was you or your child or anyone in the house, and we're going to try to save that pet.
Are there stickers that we can put on our windows saying, hey, there are pets inside of our home?
I have seen them around. You know, there's a kennel here in Lethbridge that I take my dog on the south side. They have magnets and stickers around. I believe I've seen them at some of the other department stores and home hardware stores, things like that here in the city as well. So,
Troy, how common are kitchen fires? And are they fires tied in with a faulty appliance such as a stove or microwave, or maybe simply cooking that's gotten out of control, like when I usually cook?
Yeah, me as well. I keep telling myself that the smoke detector is not my timer. But, you know, when I first started here, Hal, 10 plus years ago, kitchen fires were our number one type. They were the number one type here in the city. Over the last few years, that has changed. We are a lot more into smoking fires, electrical fires, things like that. But the number one types of kitchen fires we receive is, say, people not paying attention when they're cooking, unattended, people leaving their kitchen, leaving their stove. I know we're a busy society. You know, we're a technological society. We're always on our phones or computers or on TV or video games. We just need to remind people that when you're cooking, you need to remember you're cooking. And that's even in the kitchen and or outside of your barbecue. It needs to be attended. You need to be paying attention. We do sometimes have fires caused by old faulty appliances. 90% of the time with those, though, it turns into be an electrical fire, because lots of times what it is it's the electrical cord or something like that that's just it's not covered, it's not doing well, it overheats, and that's what catches fire. And then the stove is actually a victim of the fire and not the cause.
How about some of the older, smaller appliances that we leave plugged in? Let's say maybe a toaster or even a hairdryer when we take off, go to work, and maybe go on holidays. Could they also maybe potentially cause a fire?
The risk is always there. I experienced a fire many, many years ago with a coffee pot. Just the power surged. It was a very older home. The power surged and the coffee pot actually caught on fire. Wasn't a lot of damage. Everyone was fine, but it did. Ever since then, the only thing that stays plugged in when I leave my home, other than just for work, but when I leave for any amount of time, the only thing that stays plugged in is my fridge or freezer. Unplug everything else. And that's not to make people nervous. We need to remind people, if your house is wired properly, we also remind people, you know what, use a proper CSA approved power bar that has surge protection. That will help you with that. But you know what? Why have stuff plugged in if you're not using it? So things like a coffee pot, toaster, I can tell you right now, mine at home are not plugged in. We have not had a lot of issues here in the city of Lethbridge, but even when it comes to phone chargers, if you're not charging your phone, unplug it. Don't leave it in. Anything that's plugged in, electricity produces heat, and it leaves that slight opportunity that something could happen. I mean, most electrical outlets don't just burst into flames, but it could come down to anything. There could be dust on it. There could be, maybe it's very close to curtains that may be like very thin curtains or shears that could be close to it, that radiant heat from the plug could catch them on fire. So I've always lived in the habit, and I have a 21-year-old son that I've taught him since he was very young as well. As far as I know, he still leaves everything unplugged as well.
So Troy, how much time do we typically have to evacuate a home before maybe flames or smoke overtake us?
You know what, that is a great question. When I was looking at your list, I thought that was fantastic. With the amount of materials and stuff used now to make new furniture, it's not exaggerating when we say every second counts. Years ago, even if we say as much as 10 to 15 years ago, by the time something ignited in your home, it took a few minutes before the smoke to get thick enough to set off the detector. And once that went off, you still had 5-6 minutes to get out. Nowadays, with new furniture and the amount of products and petroleum products that are in furniture, the smoke is so toxic you need to get out as fast as you can. To put a number on it, I would say when your smoke detector goes off, you need to be out of that house within 2 minutes. And that's just really trying to train people and remind people that, you know what, treat it as real. That smoke detector goes off, you get out and you make your way out the door. So, it's a good idea. Just make sure your exit doors are always clear. Don't have 50 pairs of shoes in front of your doors that's going to stop something. Don't try to search for different things like we spoke of earlier, photo albums and stuff like that. If you get out of that place properly and you close the door, you have your doors closed, there's a good chance that fire is not going to spread and not going to damage too much of your home. And I know it's hard. Listen, I've spoken to so many families that have had fires, and obviously they're in a horrible point of their day in their lives. And I just try to reiterate to them, say, you know what though, you're still here hugging your child, you're still alive. It's just stuff. It can be redone. And there's quite a few times actually that even after a structure fire, we can send some of our firefighters in. The homeowners have asked us to go in to look for passports or maybe an urn and some of that. And 9 times out of 10, we do find it. We bring it out and give it to them. So the biggest thing that we just want people to realize is you need to get out. As soon as you hear that smoke detector, teach your kids, teach everybody in the home that it's real. You need to get out, and the importance of making sure they work. Smoke detectors have expiry dates. They're only good for 10 years.
It seems like a lot of home builders these days are building more 2.5 story, even 3-story homes. Do you think we should maybe have a rope ladder available in some of those higher homes?
I actually had a lady call me the other day and ask me that same question. And rope ladders are good. They are very good. And if you, the family member that you're going to put that rope ladder in, if you feel safe and trusting that they can use that ladder, then fantastic. I agree with that. That's okay. The biggest thing to remember with those rope ladders, though, is they are rated for a certain weight. And they're actually used once and they're no good anymore. So if you have one of those in, you can't train with it, you can't practice with it. It's just you have to be able to use it. So lots of times what I tell people is we don't want people breaking windows, jumping out of windows, things like that. If you're on your second floor or even your third floor and you hear your smoke detector go off, it's just like we were all told when we were kids, and I teach the young kids at school now, you touch the door with the back of your hand because hopefully you're sleeping with your door closed. If it's not too hot, you open it. If you open it and there's just smoke in front of you, take a t-shirt, something, cover your mouth, get down nice and low, crawl down the stairs, go down on your belly, on your butt, whatever you have to do, and you need to be able to get out. If you open that door and there's flames in front of you, like I said earlier, that's when you just close the door. If you have a towel or a sweater or something you can jam on the bottom, do that. Either call 911 or open your window and start yelling so people know where you are, and that's the first place we're going.
Now, every spring and fall, when we have a time change, we're always reminded to check the batteries and our smoke detectors here. What about carbon monoxide detectors? Should we have one on every level of our home, Troy?
You know what? It's definitely not. It's such case dependent on that. Like I have a carbon monoxide detector in my home, and I have it in my basement. I have it outside my furnace room, my laundry room, things like that. I always tell people that if they have something, like, you need to think of the different areas in your home where you could possibly get carbon monoxide. So, like if where you have your furnace room, where you have things like that, you can have it down there. If you have a natural gas fireplace or anything like that in your home, or even a wood burning fireplace, definitely a good idea to have one on that level. I also tell people that have an attached garage, it's a good idea to have a carbon monoxide detector just outside the door that goes into their attached garage. We all, like I said, we're all so busy. Sometimes we forget. We've had issues with people warming up their vehicles in their attached garage with the door closed. We've had people coming home from work 3 o'clock in the morning. They go into the garage, they shut the garage door, they go in and they forget to shut their car off. So it's so important to have those carbon monoxide detectors, absolutely. And it's the same thing with those batteries you need to change every year as well.
Now, before we let you go here, let's talk a bit about fire extinguishers for a home. There are different types for, grease fires, for electrical fires. What's the best type of fire extinguisher that people can have in their house?
People need to have an ABC extinguisher. Now, a Class A fire is just your ordinary combustibles, wood, paper, anything like that. A Class B is a fuel or flammable liquid fire, and a Class C is an electrical fire. There is a Class K extinguisher out there that is used for kitchen grease fires, but it's not a grease fire at home. It's a grease fire in a restaurant that works in conjunction with the suppression system that's already in the restaurant over the deep fryers. Even if you deep fry every day at home, you don't need it. What people need to remember is an ABC extinguisher will put out all those types of fires. What's in an ABC extinguisher is baking soda. So if someone doesn't have one, or even if they do, maybe have a couple boxes of baking soda around as well. And when you're cooking, have a lid beside you. It's not attended. If all of a sudden something catches on fire, you can either grab the extinguisher or just cover it with the lid, shut the burner off and move it off the burner. But so important. And one last thing I'd like to say about cooking, where a lot of times we have, if you ever do have a fire inside your oven, or inside your microwave, don't panic, just hit the power button. Don't open the door. If you open the door, that rush of oxygen is going to make that fire get even bigger. If you leave the door closed and just hit the power button, there's not enough oxygen there to support the combustion, and that fire will go out in seconds. You're going to have to give your oven or your microwave a good clean, but at least your house is still standing and nothing has spread.
Troy Hicks, Fire Prevention Officer with the City of Lethbridge Fire Department. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks again for having me, Hal. I really appreciate it.
You bet. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.